Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here. Oh, it feels like it's been a long time since I've made one of these battle reports. In my own defense, this isn't because of anything boring like work or family or anything like that. The reason why I haven't been doing these battle reports as often as I have, but because I've actually been painting a lot, and that's been taking up a lot of my time. Now, you're going to see what I've been working on probably in like a month or so, but it is for Warhammer Fantasy, it is for this series, which, by the way, is a Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition escalation campaign. If you haven't watched any of the previous videos, I recommend that you go and do that. Also, if you want to see the complete rules for this campaign, Local Player made those. I've posted a link to that packet in the show notes, so you can check that out if you like. But for the time being, this is the first game in round 4. The scenario for this one is called Bones to Pick, and this is an interesting one. I do like this concept. I've used a variation of this before in Morr campaigns before, and this is where you place bounties on other people's units. I actually had an idea for making a comp system back when 8th edition was in its heyday and people were looking at ways of balancing out all the armies, of making sort of an auto comp that if you played a game, the person who lost the game can choose one of the opponent's units, and from then on, that unit costs, like 5% more or something like that, so that slowly units that were more powerful got more expensive and so on and so forth. But that doesn't matter for right now. For right now, understand that before the game begins, each player chooses one unit from all the other players' armies, and that is going to be the unit that they've placed a bounty on. That's the most hated unit, and it's going to have effects in this scenario. So to go with that, we actually don't get to change our army that we took in the last round, in round 3. We have to take that exact same army. We do add an extra 150 points on top of that, but nothing can be taken out or swapped, so that, if someone really hates a unit, that unit can't, disappear for this round. So anyway, the standard stuff, it's on a 4x4 table. We're up to a mighty 750 points now, so it's still a pretty small game, I'm not going to lie. We've got d6 pieces of terrain, and there really aren't any special rules in the actual game itself. For counting up victory points, there will be some special rules, but we'll get to those later. For right now, here is my slowly growing Vampire Count's army. Again, I have not done great on my painting. I know I say this every time. I really want that unit of zombies painted. I have been making progress on it, but they are not on the table yet. So again, I've had to kind of scrounge and scrape together what I can to fill up that extra 150 points that I get for this round. So a lot of this is going to look familiar. We've got my level 2 Necromancer with the Ruby Ring of Ruin. That's Ethrak Crowfather up in front. He's brought along the Dwellers Beyond, which is 24 Crypt Ghouls with a Ghast leading them. We have the Doomed Hunters, those are my skeletons, light armor shields, and Musician and Champion, there's 11 of them total. In the back we have the Crypt Horrors, those are my Stone Guardians. Over to the right we have Bunny and Kindling, those are the Fellbats. And the new additions this round, we have the Stygian Fairy, which is my Corpse Cart. Now, I really wanted to take a unit of 20 zombies and the Corpse Cart. I was under the impression that the Corpse Cart would make those zombies really good. In the event, it's probably just as well I didn't get those zombies painted, because really, the Corpse Cart doesn't do that much to zombies. Honestly, it's a lot better in conjunction with those Crypt Ghouls, but really, it doesn't really shine until you're going to get more levels of magic, and you can reliably get the those augments off. So the idea is that if you cast an augment on the Corpse Cart, or an augment that affects the Corpse Cart, it gives everyone within 6 inches always strikes first, which is really nice for the ghouls. It's pretty unreliable. I'm really only looking at Invocation of Nehek, and my opponents, they like to shut that spell down. But anyway, it still is a chariot. At low point values, that's not too bad. It's got regen, it's fairly tough. It's okay, it's 90 points, but it's probably not the ideal choice for a 750 point game. Anyway, and of course I've got 60 points left over that was going to go to those zombies, but now I'm not using them. So I've got Mr. Grimm, my Wraith. And again, this is my Angels of Morr army, so most of this stuff is stuff that I see as servants of death or agents of death in some way, of the afterlife and the actual realm of the dead. So the Grim Reaper fits right into that, and so I've got that Wraith right there. He's independent hero level character, 60 points as is, and that's all you get. For my opponent's army, we are fighting Captain Jackpot's Goblin Horde. So right there we have a giant unit of 30 Night Goblins. They have spears, shields, full command, and nets. We have two big squig herds. That's a new addition. I think my opponent is sick of taking fear tests, so he's going to take stuff that's immune to psychology. So we have two big squig herds. Looks like there's 12 squigs and 7 herders in each of those units. We have a single troll in the back. We have a single goblin wolf chariot over by him. We have a mangler squig. That giant spider is actually standing in for the mangler squig in this game, but that's what that is. So the big wrecking ball of destruction is going to be making its way in this game. The night goblins have a single fanatic hidden in them. Spoiler alert, there he is up in front. We have Captain Jackpot himself. He is the general. He is a goblin war boss with a great weapon and the Talisman of Protection. That's the 4+ save. And a nice addition for this round, we have a goblin battle standard bearer. So he has got a great weapon and that's it. As far as the bounty units go, the Tomb Kings player, who is the player not currently playing in this game, has chosen the squig herd that was originally in my opponent's 600-point army. So one of those squig herds is going to be worth triple victory points for this game. I believe in my army, the Crypt Horrors are the most hated units, so my opponent's going to get triple victory points if he manages to polish off those guys. So here's the board after everything's been set up and the train has been laid out and all that kind of thing. We have a big swamp in the middle of the table. I believe that's Kemrian quicksand. It's the kind, it's dangerous terrain for anyone that runs, marches, charges, flees through it. So I stuck that right in the middle of the table to try and cause him as many problems as possible. And we have a normal forest tucked way in the corner there. For spells, I pick up Invocation of Nehek and Hellish Vigor. Not my favorite, but I'll see what I can make of them. So I win the roll to go first, so I'm going to just make a general advance with my troops. I'm going to hang back with those skeletons. I'm going to try and protect myself with that swamp there. I'm going to kind of surge forward with my Crypt Horrors. I don't know if that's a fantastic idea, but I do kind of want to tempt a charge with those squigs. If they fail, then that's great. You know, animosity might force them to try and charge, and then I'll slow them down a little bit. If they do make it, they'll go through the swamp, which hopefully a bunch of those squigs will drown, and I can possibly win that combat. The Crypt Horrors versus the squigs is an interesting matchup. I think at full strength, the squigs win that combat, and I start getting in some real trouble there. But if I can trim down those squigs a little bit, I think it starts to shift quickly. So I'm real happy about that swamp there, and I'm seeing if I can use it. And I'm trying to be a little bit aggressive. I don't want to hold back too much. Same thing with the Crypt Ghouls on the left. I want to bring them forward. I think they beat whatever they're immediately up against. The Fellbats are hanging back. They are in charge of either diverting something I don't want to fight, like the squigs, or just jumping on that Mangler squig and destroying it right away. In my first magic phase, I do pretty well. I get the Ruby Ring of Ruin off, and I manage to blast a couple of squigs. The center squig unit is the most hated one. That's the one that I get bonus victory points. So I'm going to pick on that one right away. Plus, it's a little harder for me to get to, a little harder for me to neutralize, kind of being tucked in the middle lines there. So I'll want to try and do damage when I can. So I blast 3 squigs and 1 herders with my first spell, which is real nice. So it's my opponent's turn, and the center squigs, the most hated squigs, are going to fail animosity, and they're just going to hang out right there, which is pretty good news for me. He's also going to start bearing left with his Mangler squig, his troll, and his wolf chariot, trying to kind of outflank my lines there. Everything else moves up pretty quickly. In the shooting phase, his chariots get to shoot. He's just in range of my ghoul units, and those plucky goblins manage to kill off a ghoul. So it is my turn now, and I don't know if you've noticed this before, but my Wraith was actually parked in the Ghoul unit at the beginning of the game. So I sense an opportunity here, and I'm going to have him leave that unit. He's going to march straight out in front, straight into the Mangler Squig, and he's going to kill that immediately. Normally, when you move into contact with the Mangler Squig, it does a bunch of hits, but the Wraith is ethereal, and it doesn't hurt him at all, which is terrible. This is a kind of a really dastardly, cheesy maneuver for me to do. What can you do? I needed to make up the points. I probably shouldn't have taken a Wraith. It's not the worst thing I could have taken, but I do feel a little bit bad here. He's brought this nice Mangler Squig, and there's just nothing he can really do to avoid this right out of the gate. So the Wraith comes up and just sticks his Wraith inside the guts of the Mangler Squig. The Mangler Squig dies, can't do anything to the Wraith, and not only that, the Wraith is going to move in range of those Night Goblins, which means they have to release the Fanatic. And the Fanatic isn't going to do anything to the Wraith, so the Fanatic actually sails a long distance towards the Ghouls, but obviously that's a lot further away and a lot sooner than my opponent would have liked to have had that Fanatic released. Anyway, everything passes the panic test for the Mangler getting killed by this terrifying monster, and we move on. So I start to get a little bit nervous about these, about how far forward I've flung some of my stuff. I realize that they're outside of my magical support range, and I've decided maybe I was a little bit too aggressive, and so I'm gonna push back a little bit. So I believe my ghouls and my crypt horrors just back up a touch away from the onrushing goblins. In my magic phase, I managed to get Ruby Ring off again. Don't manage to get Invocation off. Don't heal that one ghoul. But I do kill off one Squig Herder from the far right unit, which is the one immediately threatening my Crypt Horrors and the one I'm feeling a little bit more nervous about right now. So it is my opponent's turn, and he is immediately going to charge his squigs into my Crypt Horrors, which I was a little bit nervous about, but this could go okay. So he charges through the swamp, he makes his dangerous terrain test, and he does pretty well on that. One herder and one squig are going to sink into the depths, never to be seen again. The troll is going to bravely go and charge the wraith. Now, the troll obviously can't hurt the wraith, but he will get that bonus combat resolution for charging. So, you know, if my wraith can't do any wounds to the troll, he's going to win by 1 and take my wraith down to half wounds. To help out, his Goblin Wolf Chariot is going to move off to the left. He's going to try and get a flank charge on that Wraith in later turns, so that combat resolution will eventually grind that guy down. In other news, his Goblins are going to move forward as far as they can, and they are going to be accompanied by those Squigs who are going to come right up to the edge of the swamp. They don't want to spend any more time in there than they have to. And it looks like the Fanatic is just going to slowly spin a little bit closer to my ghouls. In the close combat phase, the Wraith does in fact manage to wound the Troll, so he's going to tie up that combat, and he's feeling a little bit better about that. And I didn't take a picture of this, but the big combat over on the right where the Squigs charge the Crypt Horrors, the Crypt Horrors are going to go and kill only 2 Squigs, which is pretty disappointing. In return, the Squigs don't do great against the Crypt Horrors either. They're going to cause 2 wounds, which means I'm going to take a further 2 wounds crumble, so 1 Crypt Horror goes away and leaves another one wounded, and we'll move on to the next round. So it's my turn, and I figure, why not go for the gusto? Those Night Goblins are right there. He's got all his valuable characters in there. I've got some pretty powerful units lined up beside him. I figure I'm not going to get a better shot at this than right now. So the ghouls charge in, and the Stygian Fairy, my corpse cart, also charges in. Now, in order to do so, the ghouls have to go straight through that Fanatic, which I don't really mind because I am going to get a magic phase to try and heal those guys back up again, which has failed me before, but I'm confident this time, sure. So anyway, I smash through the Goblin Fanatic. It's going to go ahead and die, but it's going to take 5 ghouls along with it, which is about average. Bunny and Kindling go to redirect the Squig Herd. I don't want them charging into that combat, tipping the balance, because I don't feel like I'm going to break this big Goblin unit anytime soon, so I need a little bit of time to grind those down. So the Fellbats move into the swamp to keep those Squigs busy for a little bit. But I get a little bit of bad news in the magic phase. I roll a double 1 for the Winds of Magic, which means no boosted invocation for me unless I double 6 it or make like a 10 or something like that. Something really high. Yeah, I think I need a 10 on 2 dice. Well, I go for it, I don't get it, and so yeah, so that's kind of left everyone to their own devices. If I had managed to get Invocation off, obviously my Crypt Horrors would have felt a lot better, my Ghouls would have felt a lot better, but that's what you get when you got low-level vampire count. Sometimes it does amazing things for you, and sometimes it doesn't. So it doesn't work for me in this case, so everyone's left to their own devices, and we go on to the close combat phase, where these Squigs promptly eat up all of my Crypt Horrors. Nom 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 nom. So that's really bad news. So Crypt Horrors are gone, right flank is gone, and the Squigs reform to look menacingly at my skeleton bunker holding my Necromancer General. So here's a little bit of an interesting situation, and this is kind of me not thinking things through as thoroughly as I should have. So I want to limit the amount of damage that his general can do, and so I issue a challenge with my Ghast. So he can either respond with his BSB, and the BSB is a lot more vulnerable than the general. So it's very possible that the Ghast just kills the BSB with a lucky set of rolls. He can of course go for his Goblin unit champion, or he can accept with his War Boss. And so what he does is he accepts with his War Boss, and so the War Boss has to move in contact with my Ghast, since the Ghast is the one who challenged. But the thing is, he can go all the way to the left and block off all of those ghouls on the far left. So I can't attack the war boss because he is in a challenge with the Ghast. And the thing is, those last ghouls all the way on the left-hand side of my unit, they can't attack anybody because the only thing that they are in base-to-base contact with is that war boss who is not a valid target. So that was a clever, dastardly maneuver by my opponent. He's cut down the number of attacks that I can make with that arrangement. So I had to take a picture of it and share it with you guys. Try and make my opponent feel bad about that, which he shouldn't. He shouldn't feel bad about it. It was a good maneuver. So, as you might expect, the Ghast doesn't manage to hurt the war boss. The war boss goes and chops him up good and proper, giving him 3 wounds in the challenge. The nets come in and net my ghouls, which is a real shame. 7 goblins do die, probably mostly because of the impact hits in the corpse cart. I lose a bunch of ghouls to those nasty goblinses. And when all is said and done, the ghouls have to crumble, so they lose their champion and they lose a total of 9 ghouls. And the corpse cart loses by exactly the amount it takes to actually kill the thing off. So that absolutely did not go great. I killed a couple of goblins, but ooh, that ghoul unit is in real bad shape. It's not going to last long, and the corpse cart is gone. This game has turned badly very, very quickly. And to finish up that round, the Wraith fails to wound the Troll, so that is a pushed combat as well. And this is no good. This is my opponent's turn. The Squigs don't fail animosity, and so they are going to crash into my skeleton bunker with the Necromancer. The Squigs go and charge the bats, and they are going to lose a handler and 2 Squigs to the nasty swamp. And the Chariot smashes into my Wraith's flank. Gotta go save that Troll. So first up, we're going to do the Wraith combat. The Wraith turns to his left and goes and sticks his scythe into the Chariot. It's going to cause 1 wound, which is nice, but still my opponent has a flank and a charge, so he's up by 1 in the close combat resolution, and so my Wraith is going to take a wound. But still, he's hanging in there. Good job, Mr. Grimm. Unsurprisingly, the Squigs in the center eat the bats, yum yum yum, and go and reform towards the middle. The Night Goblins lose 2 goblins to the attacks of the ghouls, and then just go and annihilate the unit, and then reform. And saving the most important for last, we have the Skeleton and Necromancer combat. So the Skeleton Bodyguard does reasonably well. They try their best, and they chop down 2 Squigs in this combat, but really there was no saving this situation. The Squigs eat a total of 6 skeletons, and that's more than enough to crumble the entire unit. So there goes the skeletons, there goes the Necromancer. Oh, that's bad news. The only good thing is that basically all my army is dead except for the Wraith. Fortunately, the Mr. Grimm does manage to pass his leadership test and doesn't take any wounds. And we go on to my very, very brief turn. So I've only got 1 model on the board, and the only thing that he can do is pass his leadership test to stay alive, which he does manage to do, so he's really holding in there. So we're going on to the close combat phase. He needs to cause a wound in order to tie the combat. If he causes more than that, then he could actually win the combat and break free a little bit, and, probably not accomplish much except make me feel a little better. But it was not to be. The close combat phase comes around, he doesn't cause any wounds, and sure enough, he crumbles away because of that Chariot in his flank. So that was a pretty good sized stomping. It was a fun game. We'll go into this. We actually have a little bit of time before the 3rd player arrives, so we're actually going to take these armies and we're going to square off again, and we're going to try it again. So I'll save some of my analysis until the end of that battle report. But for the time being, the Angels of Morr Vampire Count's army wandered into this terrible swamp and were just devoured by the angry goblins and Squigs living there. So, thanks for watching. We'll be back for more Warhammer 8th Edition Fantasy Escalation campaign, and I will see you on the next one.